All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of The New Frontier. Today is just me, but I have a very, very special guest who is also a friend of mine who I always enjoy speaking to whenever I see him live, which is actually very nice because he's more and more over to Europe. My next guest is an incredibly successful entrepreneur and seller. He has managed to build 9 brands to 8 figures. He is incredibly versed in anything to do with Amazon. He has been in this space for a while. And at the moment, he's also part of the amazing team at Clear Ads. I want you to bring to stage my friend, Ben Weber. Hi, Ben.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining. Actually, we just saw each other. What was it, last week?
Yeah,
At the European Seller Conference. Shout out to Augustus and his team for a really brilliant event. And Ben was actually doing a really interesting presentation. So I actually wrote the entire title of your presentation, which was Maximizing Profits by Understanding Your Buyers and Deserved Ranking. So I wanted to actually have a chat about this presentation because it was a really interesting point of view. So firstly, can you tell us a little bit about what is a deserved ranking and what are the some of the main outtakes from the session that you talked about?
yeah. I mean, the deserved ranking is basically just where you should actually be if you compare your product to the other products that are on the search pages that you're showing up. So, if you have additional features that other products don't have, or they have ones that you don't have, or there's a massive price difference, like trying to figure out where you would be if you were lined up next to another all the products and someone was just coming in and randomly arranging them, not taking into account advertising cost off Amazon marketing, social media, anything like that, and just kind of figuring out where would you stick if you weren't forcing the issue or someone else wasn't forcing the issue, to kind of figure out where you actually belong on Amazon.
Mm-hmm. And you talked a lot about, in a sense, positioning within a niche.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about what do you mean by that, and sort of like what maybe Amazon sellers should be really thinking about when launching a product nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, with positioning, there are a few things. And when you're talking about the deserved rank and how positioning impacts that, a lot of it is just going to be how are you positioning yourselves versus the other products that you're competing with within your category. So, in a lot of cases, it's not something where you're positioning your product. Like if you're selling Advil, you're not competing against iPhones. So, just making sure that you understand who you're actually competing with based on what people are searching for. So, if people are searching for a supplement and you sell that supplement, and you're not competing with all the other supplements in the world, you're competing with the other ones who are under that same kind of umbrella of impact and effect that that supplement is going to have. So what you're trying to position yourself as is the best one of those. You don't have to be the best supplement overall. You have to be the best one of whatever the specific product is that, or specific impact, I guess, for how people are going to feel, how people are going to react. That's what you're trying to position yourself through. And you can do that in a number of ways. You can do that by talking about the kind of the emotion of what they're going to feel when they have it. So stop feeling pain, or wake up uh, more energized, or like there are a lot of different phrases like that that people are going to use that are kind of the gateway into positioning. But really, what you're trying to tell the customer is exactly how they're going to react to what you have and why that's good for them. And you're going to see the results of that in the reviews that people give you. And you're going to see that in the way that people talk about you on social media, and even in the questions that come through about what is it that you're selling, what does this do, they're going to repeat your words back at you, which is just going to reinforce it, which then reinforces it to Amazon, which as Amazon moves more into AI with Rufus and the various uh, tools that they're using and algorithms that they're using, you're just reinforcing that information for them and making it better.
Hmm. And actually, like, what would be really interesting is, do you have an actual process that you follow to kind of, let's say you have a category that you have identified an opportunity to launch a new product. Like, how would you go about to figure out what is a unique positioning that will, let's say, differentiate you from all the competitors? And do you have, let's say, an example where you've actually applied this process?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at what people are saying and the questions people are asking, they're telling you what they want you to solve. So if you look at the top selling products and you can figure out a kind of unique way to improve them, whether that's looking at, okay, they like this, but it needs to be 2 inches longer, or they really, really like this, but it keeps breaking whenever the heat goes over a certain temperature, or anything like that, where you want to go in and you can find a way to solve the problems that people are having, which is, I mean, kind of basic what everyone's been doing for years. But I think where a lot of people struggle is they can read the reviews, they can go in and they can find the problems and they can fix them, but they don't tell people that they've been fixed. And they're
Okay.
really, really bad at showcasing that on listings. I mean, or you can create a problem. I the company that I started with my friends, we used to sell a very, very large amount of plastic straws, which we stopped doing because the environmental impact is probably not great. Uh, but we advertised them as BPA free. Now, every single product, plastic straw in the world is BPA free, but nobody else was marketing it that way. Nobody else had a position that way. And so within a week of us making that change, we went from being in like the 10 to 20 range for most of the terms we were ranking on to being in the first to third,
Wow.
just by putting in something that everybody else already had. But it kind of led to that questioning from the consumer where it's like, wait, BPA, I think that's bad. This is free of that. The others don't say they're free of that. We should probably buy theirs. And so it's just uh, finding a, if you can't find a unique way to sell, to make your product, then find a unique way to position your product.
Yeah, and this is really amazing. I think this is the thing. Like, I use a lot of AI analysis now to figure out what are the, I guess, the gaps in terms of benefits, use cases that product listings don't have. And there is so many glaring, let's say, use cases or problems that customers are using the product for, but the seller is not mentioning them. And it really, like, the, for example, the review section is so full of insight. And I always find, like, let's say, using tools like Claude so useful to actually understand really what the problems are, and actually, like, really not just mention them, but like use that as a really a differentiation point versus competitors who are not. I actually wanted to also, if you can touch maybe on, let's say, finding a product that is maybe its original purpose is something completely different, but you position it in a way that
Yeah.
it's changes, it's kind of twists it in on its head.
So we used to sell kind of disposable biodegradable paper bowls, and we're having to be looking through the reviews, and we, this was before AI, and so we had Excel and Google spreadsheets where there you plug in all the reviews and it spits out, here are all the terms people are mentioning a lot, and we kept seeing the word cat, and we were very confused, like, what does cat have to do with a paper bowl? And so we went in and we looked at it and we figured out that people were buying these bowls and keeping them in their car to feed stray cats. And we're like, wait, this can't possibly be a thing. And we went through, there's got to be like one person. We went through and we found like 15 or 20 reviews. They were all talking about using these bowls to feed stray cats. So we made a completely new listing for these bowls as a cat feeding tool for stray cats. And I mean, it wasn't like a huge home run or anything, but we ended up selling 25 or 30 units a day on it.
Yeah, that's not bad. I mean, this is the thing, like, everything incremental. I mean, you don't have to really do anything new. You just basically add incremental revenue because you are absolutely tailored to that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Right. So I am super interested to like understand a little bit about your kind of journey into this space. So, you've started with Amazon Arbitrage, and then you have built 9 brands that you scaled. So, like, let's first start with the arbitrage. Like, how did you get into that?
Uh, so the company that I was working with before I started on Amazon decided that they were going to eliminate my bonus from which was about 25% of my salary. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna eliminate all the time that I work here. And so that was the end of I found that out in December of 2014 and I quit on January 1st of 2015 because I wanted to make sure that my 401k vested. And I at the time happened to have a couple friends who were trying to figure out something else to do, and one of them was like, we should try this Amazon thing. I've been going to all these bargain outlet, and they have a bunch of products that I could buy really cheaply, and I can sell them. Do you guys want to do that? And I was like, you know what? If I work with some friends for a year or two and it doesn't work out, I'll go find another job. It's not a big deal. Why not? And so we got a like 4,000 square foot warehouse and a box truck and started going to salvage auctions and discount stores and just traveling around. We actually had maps of discount stores in that we created kind of driving plans to fill up the truck. So we went as far as Niagara Falls, going north. We went into Florida, into Georgia, went all the way, like basically anywhere on the East Coast that you can think of, we were. And I mean, there were some disasters with the box truck where that breaking someone's driveway, getting driven into a building, like the usuals.
You
But we ended up. I mean, it was a lot of fun. Like as far as my Amazon experience, like the arbitrage was one of my probably what I look back at most fondly, just because it's always a treasure hunt. Like
Yeah.
you never know what you're gonna find next. But it just wasn't scalable to the level that we wanted.
Wow. And so actually do tell about the driving into a wall. That always
Well, it wasn't a wall; it was an awning, and sometimes the sun gets in your eyes, and you can't see when you're turning.
it happens. It happens. All right, and then so from then on, you were like, okay, I'm just going to launch 9 brands and scale them to 8 figures.
Well,
Is that
so
how you're thinking?
that wasn't quite how things went, but so we were trying to figure out what to do, and we one of the companies that we were buying wholesale, or I guess less than wholesale from. So they were a distributor who was basically just they would get rid of things at rock bottom. So if they failed at wholesale, if they failed at auction, they got to this company and they're like, "Hey, here are a bunch of things you can buy for next to nothing," and they were going out of business. And so they made us an offer to let us buy all of their inventory, and we're like, "Yeah, why not?" Looked at it, saw that we ended up with probably 200 different products, about 100 of which were already on Amazon. And so we had to make 100 listings for the other ones. And so we started doing that and we're like, hey, this is working pretty well. But again, it's the same problem where it's not scalable because as soon as those products sell out, we don't have them anymore. And if we don't have, and we have to find a new product to replace that. So that's when we started looking at what can we do with private label. And so we came up with a few products. The very first product we sold, we got pretty fortunate that a radio DJ found us and wanted to have us on his show. And he had maybe like a 200,000 person audience. And we ended up being on his show 3 times. The kind of fun thing is we had 3 weeks between when we found out that we were going to go on the show and when we were going on, and we're like, we need more products. We can't just have one. So we created 18 products in 3 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
And so when we went on the show, we had all of these new products, and we had all of this kind of momentum that we were able to use from being on the radio show. And those products are still, I mean, they're gag gifts. They sell a lot during the fourth quarter, but that was what we used to launch everything else that we did from a private label perspective. As far as building the other brands, that one of the big things that we did was when we found a supplier that was good and that we liked, we stuck with them. And so we'd go through their entire catalog and say, okay, you sell this, can we make it do this so it's slightly better? And make modifications with them. And every time we did that, we'd build a better relationship. I mean, we went to China multiple times, so we'd have better terms. We'd get priority treatment. So if they're backed up, they would ship out our products first. They make sure our stuff got done because we were ordering so much from them that they didn't want to hurt that relationship. So the more we did with them, the more it actually ended up helping us. So being able to find those manufacturers and go through and kind of build our catalog with them made it so that we were able to scale faster because they knew they're going to pay us. So they'd be willing to give us smaller runs to test products and things like that, to where that relationship led to, I guess those relationships led to us being way more successful than we maybe would have been if we hadn't done that.
Man, did you ever buy some flowers to that radio DJ, by the way?
We really should have.
Maybe you still can.
Right. It's not too late.
It's not too late. All right. There is a lot to unpack here. Actually, I'm going to start with my last question that pops into my mind, which is around sticking with the same manufacturer. Obviously, now, now we have some interesting trade wars going on and, all kinds of interesting geopolitical changes. So would you say that in 2025, this strategy will still work, sticking to the same manufacturer, or do you have to think about your supply chain in a slightly different way?
Both. I think I know a number of people who, because they have the relationships that they do have with their suppliers, when the tariffs are coming in, they're talking to the supplier about it, and they're able to get, either the supplier will split the tariff with them so that it's not having as big of an impact on them, or they're finding different ways to work around that by talking to the supplier and figuring out ways to negotiate either a better rate or a better rate for cash flow, where maybe instead of 60 days, they get 90 days for terms or something like that, where they're able to maintain a competitive advantage over the other people who are doing the same thing. So their prices don't have to go up as much, or because they don't have to pay as soon, they can take a lower margin because they know that by the time they have to pay, it's still going to be okay. So there's some things like that people are doing, but I do always think that you should be making sure that you have a backup and you have things that are ready. I mean, by the end of it, we had sourcing agents, by the time that I left the company, we had sourcing agents in 5 countries. And wow. They were looking for products that we already sold and new products and everything else. Honestly, they were looking more for materials, because if they have the materials, they can make it for the most part. But having the suppliers in other countries gives you that kind of protection and coverage. But the other token is, if you are already ordering so much from one supplier, if I go from China to Vietnam or Mexico or India or Thailand or South Korea or wherever people are saying you should be importing from next, and I say, I have a catalog of 30 products that I want you to make for me, that's going to give you so much more bargaining power, so much more negotiating power when you come to the table, even when you're starting something new.
So would you say that this is kind of if you are starting from day 0 today with no catalog and no bargaining power, would you say that kind of diversifying your supply chain right from the start is the way to go?
No. I still believe that working with one supplier and having a backup for them is going to, in the long run, be more successful. I think the diversifying your supply chain is valuable if you think that you're not going to be able to maintain the relationship you have.
Mm-hmm.
And testing a number of suppliers whenever you're starting, absolutely. But once you find one that you trust and can work with, then building that relationship, I think, can be more valuable than having, okay, I ordered this amount from this person, this amount for this person, this amount from this person, because you're also going to get so many quality differences.
Yeah. What I'm really interested in as well is like to actually dwell a little bit deeper in terms of the processes of scaling Nine Brands, because I think this is definitely, you know, a lot of people are struggling with scaling one brand, and you've managed to do that with Nine. Like, what are some of the key, I guess, processes and I guess thinking that you had to adopt in order to do that?
Having processes,
That's a good start.
just making everything as repeatable as you can and getting your stuff out of the way. Like
Hmm.
for a lot of Amazon companies, the bottleneck is the leadership team because they're
Yeah.
not willing to give up control or to have somebody else make a mistake. And so one of the things that we did that I think was worked very, very well, was very effective for us. So I started the company with 3 friends. Uh, One basically handled the warehouse, the team in our warehouse, managing everything there. One of them handled sourcing inventory, making sure we don't run out of stock, and that worked with our sourcing agents. The third was focused on what do we do next? Like, how can we keep moving forward? And how do we keep building? How do we build systems? How do we audit these systems? How do we make sure that everything in the systems is going smoothly? And just constant improvement on what we're doing. And then the fourth one was focused on figuring out what the new products are that we want to launch, figuring out how we're going to launch them, figure out how we're going to market them, what our advertising is, all of that. And so we kind of operated within our own silos, and we obviously would interact and talk, but what we all did was build out ways that other people could do the things that we had been doing. So we weren't writing our own listings. We had a team that did that. We weren't going through and running sheets to figure out how much inventory we needed to order every single day. There were people who were doing that farther down the chain. And so getting yourself out of the way so that you can do the things that you have to move the business forward, as opposed to being like, okay, everything has to be perfect. I have to look at everything. So figuring out, if I could give one piece of advice to Amazon sellers, is understand what's good enough. Like, just because you could do it better doesn't mean you should do it better. If someone can get to 85% of you and that's still successful, that's good enough.
Oh my god, this is such a good advice. I have to take it all the time because I'm a bloody perfectionist and it's really driving me crazy. But yeah, absolutely. I think this is the thing. Like I've also with some of my clients who are also struggling with I guess letting things go is this kind of thing, which is they know how to do it, therefore they enjoy to do this thing that they shouldn't be doing, and it's difficult to let go. But yeah, absolutely.
I have a good friend who I'm helping with their Amazon account, and we were looking at their inventory actually yesterday. And so I built a spreadsheet that figures their inventory out for them. And they're looking at it like, well, this information, like, this doesn't work because this and this and this and this. And it's like, okay, you're moving the milestones, you're moving the target every single time we're looking at this, because it's okay, well, the last 30 days, it says it sold this much. For the last 60, it says it sold this much. And the last this, it says, I was like, but you don't trust any of the information that's on this sheet. Like, you want to do it by hand because that's how you've always been doing it. So, like, let's go through some of these by hand and look at them and see how they compare, and just talk through what your actual end goal is that you're trying to achieve and how we achieve that. Like, cut out the, well, I don't trust this information, and get to, well, what will you trust? What do you have to see in order for this to work? And that's the way that a lot of entrepreneurs work. And this person scaled their business to just under 2 million with just themselves. And
Yeah.
so I'm helping them to figure out, which is incredible. It's an incredible success. And I'm trying to help them to scale past that, which means that they have to stop doing the work and have someone else do it.
Yeah, and it's difficult. I think it's just this kind of thing where, yeah, it's difficult to let go of things that you know how to do with your eyes closed. Talking about letting things go, so would you like when it comes to, for example, the team that you built, was that mostly people like full-time employees that you hired? Was it like an army of VAs, and how was sort of like the structure that you kind of created for that?
Yeah, so we tried to hire full time even when we were hiring VAs. So we wanted all of their time and we wanted any of the training and learnings that they were having to come from us. So we wanted them to follow our SOPs, to follow our processes, to follow our systems. If you're splitting time with a VA, they're going to have, let's say you're doing 10, 15, 20 hours a week with them, they're going to be doing more time with other people. So, and we honestly, we paid more than we probably had to because we wanted to make sure that they only worked with us. And we did that. Like, we were fortunately in a position where we could do that. But the main focus that we had was we don't want people to get bad habits from somebody else. So if we have plans that we like and we think will work, we don't want them to do like, you know what? I learned this from somebody else. I'm going to help you out and mess something up. And so we encourage people to test things and try new things, but we wanted them to do it within kind of the rubric and the schematics of the SOPs and the training that we'd given them versus coming with something completely off the wall.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think like this is the thing, you know, also don't know how overstretched that person really is. And so if you know that they're working just on your brand, you know that, you know, whatever overworkness or slack that they are dropping is on you or
Yeah.
on the individual person. And in terms of, I guess, just functional organization, like, you know, did you have a person by, let's say, function, or was it kind of like cross-functional VAs? What was kind of your thinking there?
So the one of the first things we did once we got to I think 4 or 5 VAs is we hired a VA manager. Uh,
Hmm.
so they could do a lot of the kind of assigning out tasks. And when we started out, they were cross functional, where it's a whatever we need done, we have them do. By the end, we had ones who were handling PPC, ones who were handling product research, ones who were handling uh, copywriting, and ones who were handling new product research, ones who were handling customer service. Like we had a kind of army of, well, I guess it wasn't really an army; it was like 20. Uh,
A
full
tiny army.
yeah, a tiny army. But they were all phenomenal. Like uh, we had spent a lot of time training them. At the end, all of them had been there for uh, probably an average of like 3+ years. We'd had them with us,
Wow.
and so they'd grown with the company and were a part of the company. Like we sent their kids gifts on their birthdays. Uh, it was a like we did build a very well connected and kind of almost family style of network. But yeah, we had assigned tasks and assigned specializations that people had as they move as we grew the number of VAs that we had. It just made sense.
Yeah, and I think this is so important. And actually, another person at the European Seller Conference that talked about was Yoni Kuzminski, and you know the fact that if you want to succeed, you also have to have a company culture and sort of create some sort of team spirit, and not just kind of a very functional do this, do that. And can I ask? So, what was the biggest challenge actually about building a team of 20?
Everything. No. I think that the biggest challenge was knowing what we were actually hiring for.
Hmm.
So at the start, we're like, oh, they have to have all this Amazon experience. They have to be experts at these things. We don't want to have to think about it. Like, let's just bring them in. But by the end of it, what we learned is all we really cared about was, is this person willing to make decisions? Can they think critically? And are they willing to learn new things? And those
Yeah.
were the three things that we were hiring for. That's what we asked about in interviews. That was what our focus was for everything. Because if you can learn, like, one of my friends talks about how literally the most valuable thing that skill that a person can have is the ability to learn something new.
Oh, yes.
And so that's what we look for.
Awesome. Um, let's chat a little bit about what you shared with me last week, which is, I think, is awesome. You mentioned that you have found a new niche and you're potentially thinking about starting a brand again. Like how, like what? Firstly, talk to me a little bit about how did that come about, and then a lot of the conversations I hear is that, oh, well, Amazon is getting saturated, it's getting more and more difficult to find new product.
Yeah.
Like, is that true? And I mean, obviously not quite. So let's chat about that.
So that one, I got a text message from a friend at like 11 p.m. saying, "Hey, do you want to sell this?" And we're looking at it. We're like, do we want to start selling things? Like, do I want to start selling things again? What do I want to do? And yeah, whatever. We can take a look at it. And so we ended up, we were speaking at an event together, and so we did our presentation was us going through analyzing that product and saying if we would want to sell it or not. And when we went into it, we were kind of jokingly saying we are going to do this, and we are like maybe 20% it would have happened. And as we talked to each other, because we hadn't discussed the product before, we're like, he'd say something like, "Oh yeah," and then also this and this and this, and we just kept escalating to where now we're going to launch it as a case study. But it was something where we were looking at the market. It was very, very competitive in appearance, and I think that's how you kind of get past things on Amazon now, is getting past the appearance and finding out what the actual market looks like. And there were a few ways that we saw that we could improve on what existed. The first was just there were two major brands who had been in existence for years and years and years and years. They were dominating the market, but they didn't really understand keywords. Their copy was bad. Their images were bad. And their branding, honestly, for Amazon was not correct. And so they are living based off of their name and the fact that they've been there for forever. But even just looking at what people were spending on advertising and getting into the top spots, like these are companies with 20,000+ reviews, but the top spot on that on the main term had 32 reviews for the top sponsored product. So like things like that stand out. And then we were looking at how Amazon separates out the kind of the different shopping sections where people may want to look for, which are what comes from the browse tree guide. And we were looking at that. And one of these smaller subsections on the browse tree guide had more revenue coming in from it than the main term. So the main term had over 3,000 products competing on it. The subcategory had 252. And there was another I think the main one was like 1.3 million, and the subcategory was 1.5. There was another subcategory that had like 220 products competing in it. That was over 900,000. And obviously, there's going to be crossover. There's going to, like, it's not all going to be unique, but there's all of this revenue that's coming in on these side terms that have a ton of search volume that people just aren't hitting because of the fact that they're major brands, and they're like, well, we have what we have and we're leaving it.
And so what would you say, what would be your advice for people looking for a new product to launch, in terms of how do they find these niches or these opportunities in the way you did?
So that one was my friend was going through looking at the products that his supplier sells, and he was just going through and looking at it that way. One thing that we did at my old company that I thought was really interesting and a really good way to find new products is we had everyone in the company write down 10 things every week, 10 problems. It didn't have to be a product, just a problem that they were having that they would pay $50 to never have to deal with again. And so we have this massive list of problems, and we can throw that into AI and say, here are a bunch of problems. Give me the 10 that are most likely to have a product that has a good solution for it. or whatever prompt you want to put into it. And we're able to then go in and see, okay, does this exist? Yes. Can we make it better? No, gone. And work our way through that list. And so we're finding from people out in the world unique issues that they want to never have to deal with again. And like, if you sit down and try and write 10 things you'd pay $50 to never deal with again every single week, you're eventually going to get weird. And there's some really good ideas that come from that.
Yeah.
So that's one way that I would recommend. The other is looking at patents that other people have products that other people have patented, but they haven't been able to sell. So everybody pays all this money for marketing after the fact. Like, they find their Facebook experts, they find their Instagram experts, they find their TikTok experts, their PPC experts, but they're like, but only I can make a product. But I'm not an engineer. I don't know how, like, for me to make something new and unique, I have to pay somebody else to do it for me. So if I can skip the process of me having to come up with an idea and me having to do the work, putting the money in up front to buy somebody else's patented product and buy the patent and be able to launch that, or work out an arrangement with them where they get a kickback for every unit you sell or something like that, you can get amazing products that other people have already made that they just don't know how to market. You're selling on Amazon because you know how to market.
Yeah. And so is there a platform that people can tap into patents?
Honestly, just searching for patents for sale and then starting to reach out. There are dozens of websites that have it. And like with us, what happened is, as we reached out and talked to people about more patents and looked at buying more patents, we got relationships with those websites to where they would send us like, hey, this fits the market you're looking at. Do you want this?
Nice. All right, let's talk about AI, because that is the hot topic of the day. So you mentioned using AI to get new ideas in terms of solving problems. I mean, are you using AI currently in sort of your, let's say, your relationships with your clients? Like, how do you use
Yeah.
it?
I mean, I'm using AI probably more than anything else at this point, but a lot of it is just kind of building custom GPTs has been what my focus has been. So just ones where I can plug all of the information that I wanted to think off of. So it's essentially the same thing as training a person. You're giving it all of your SOPs, everything that you want, and saying, based off of these metrics, tell me what to do. And like, you can do that with your ad campaigns. You can do that with your copywriting. Like, figure out, how do you make this master semantic SEO? How do you make this? How will this appear to an AI search bot like Rufus? Like, there's so many things you can do just on a day-to-day basis with just simple prompts. But you can also, and I mean, there are people like Danny McMillan who are going incredibly deep with what they're putting as far as how to investigate Rufus and how to connect to it. And if you're taking a lot of his writings, a lot of what Amazon is releasing in their Amazon papers, combining that into a GPT and saying, utilize this information to do X, and you can get some pretty incredible results.
Yes, Ben, I will have to take you on a walkthrough through Claude, because I think if you're specifically doing anything to do with Rufus, you should use projects. Like, I found that especially anything to do with semantic understanding of text, Claude is far superior than ChatGPT, and projects is like custom GPT. So
Yeah.
yes, next time I'll show you. Okay, so like ad analysis, analyzing for Rufus, copy. What else are you using AI for?
So I have an AI scheduler that tells me what to do with my time. So
Nice.
I tell it all the things that I want to do and what the due dates are, and it gives me my plan for the day and says, this is what you should work on during these hours. And so now it's essentially an AI assistant where I don't even have to think anymore, which my goal is to not have to think or do work. So it's working out really well. But
Nice.
no, like, so things like that. I'm trying to think of what other kind of
Or what
big
else have you
thing.
seen in the industry that is quite smart in terms of AI?
What else?
What else have you seen other sellers maybe do with
Oh
AI?
yeah. I mean the AI chat agents
Yeah.
that people are able to use for any kind of communication, anything they're trying to do, creating the bots that do everything. I mean, I was talking to Steve Simonson after
Mm.
Prague, and he gave me the phone number to call for his AI phone system that he's built that anyone can kind of tap into and utilize. But it's essentially a better customer service than a customer agent. And he's run tests, and people have been convinced that they're talking to an actual agent, and it's been AI the entire time.
Yeah, no, I
So
think voice
yeah,
agents are amazing, especially with one that has a good voice and latency. They are amazing. Like, I
yes,
think there's also ones that, call you at 3 in the morning and, have zero clue about what they are
well,
programming.
yeah. It's I mean, there's good and bad,
Yeah,
but it all comes down to the back end and what you put into it.
yeah,
Uh,
100%.
I mean, obviously making videos, making images, creating the music to go with those videos, and anything else you're doing. I got bored and was playing around with making songs on AI with some friends the other day, which was kind of fun. Uh,
Are you
is
gonna
there
send me
there's
one? I want to hear one. I want to
uh,
hear original.
maybe offline,
Okay.
but
And in terms of, yeah, what is, because a lot of, what I heard on in Prague was very much around how Amazon is changing, and this sort of Rufus heavy future. Like, what do you think? Like, Rufus is like, how do you see Rufus in sort of the landscape of where we work at?
and I see it as a good thing, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
because it's going to eliminate a lot of the, I don't want to say BS, but a lot of the things that people used to do where it's like, I'm going to list this keyword 78,000 times because I think it's going to make me rank higher. Or you'd look at the way that people were launching products where it's just like, I'm going to do giveaways, and while I'm doing these giveaways, I'm going to have these, like, my title is going to be best new Amazon product forever, best new Amazon launch, best, like, but I mean, not those words, but I like the keywords for their product. And it's just repeating the same stuff over and over again. Like, it's not a good customer experience, and it's not making the best product sell. So, like, I think it is going to be better for, in the long run, for the people who are buying, but it'll also be better for sellers because I think it's going to eliminate a lot of the people who just kind of throw stuff up and forget about it.
Yeah.
Uh, it's going to make it so that the people who are actually running a proper business are going to be more successful. And I think it's something where it's just reinforcing best business practices. Like, if the best way to rank using Rufus or any of the others is to make sure that if a customer asks a question, your listing answers that question. How is that a bad thing? Uh, like,
Yeah,
that's what
or
you
understanding what your customer cares about.
right.
Yeah, right.
Like, that's what you should be doing already. So the only thing that maybe
What?
changes is the order that you have to put the words into.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, that's just how things should be. That's how things should have been being done from the beginning.
Yeah. Basically, Amazon sellers trying to be proper brands.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
And
weird concept.
I know it's like it's a full circle. Like, it's really interesting. Like, my original career path was sort of more classic marketing, looking at the audience, where they are and how to reach them. And then I kind of niched into Amazon, which was much more tactical of like keywords, keywords, keywords. And now it's funny because my knowledge and experience from the beginning of my career is now coming back full speed, because now it's about really understanding that audience piece, which before that wasn't so important on Amazon. So really interesting how this industry is going to experience like a marketing one-on-one foundational education.
which is a good thing, honestly.
Yeah. 100%. And but do you think this is a common debate that we have, me and Max and some of our guests on the show? Is the search bar going to stay, or do you think that at some point it's gonna go?
I don't think it'll ever completely go away. I think it might change the way that it's set up, and it may be a like almost become a prompt bar instead of a search bar. Uh, but I think there's always going to be there just realistically there has to be something for customers to say what they want. And I think that the way that Amazon has it now, where if you start typing in electrical tape, it'll give you a bunch of other things that add on to it. I think it may end up being where instead of it being like electrical tape black 12 pack, it'll be you type in electrical tape and it'll say, here are the questions that people are asking. And you click on the question that's relevant to you, and then that takes you into the products that match it. But I think it'll be more of a like almost turning Answer the Public into a into what the search bar is.
Yeah, interesting. And this is the
What do
thing.
you
I
think?
I also think that actually the search bar is not going to go away. I think there is a matter of as well, age preferences. I think there is going to be older audiences that just prefer to like make their own mind in the way that they are used to, which is with getting a lot more results versus getting, it's a lot about customer psychology. I think there is going to be people who'd not want a chatbot to decide for them what they should buy. And of course, Rufus does suggest several options, but it's always kind of like, here are three options. Here are the three options that, I think are best for you. And I think a lot of customers will still want to be like, no, I am going to make my own mind about this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, I have always thought that this how we decide how to buy products is directly related with how quickly the adoption of general AI chatbots is going to spread, like how accustomed we are with using ChatGPT for everything in our day to day, not just for business. Because the more you get used to chatting with a chatbot and getting answers in this way, the more it will be just a normal thing to interact in this way with any platform, whether it's a marketplace or your day-to-day research. So, and funnily enough, actually right now I'm falling back in love with ChatGPT. I'm total Claude girl, but ChatGPT with search is so good.
It is.
Yeah, like with sort of the new reasoning model, it's like, if you just use the reasoning model, that's okay, but when you use it with the web version, it's like, wow, this is really, really good.
Well, I mean, it has to be with, I mean, with, like you said, I know you love Claude, but I mean, Grok that's coming out with some of the incredible things that it's at as far as its deep search.
Yeah, it's funny. Like Steve Simonson was, I don't know if it was us three, whether he was looking at the weather forecast for Iceland, and
Yes.
he had trained it to be a little bit inappropriate Grok. I never really have played with Grok. What do you think about Grok, and like why do you like it so much?
So I've started playing with it over the last couple of weeks, and I mean, I played with it a little bit before talking to Steve, but Steve really kind of pushed me to go deeper into it because if there's anything to do with AI, he's probably tested it already.
Yeah.
But I think it does really, really well with more complex problems. Where like ChatGPT, for example, you kind of have to almost train it to think the way that you want it to think. like Grok kind of masters that already to some extent. It's also really good at research as far as like I was trying to figure out if a manufacturer was a manufacturer or a trading company or what they actually were, and it gave me like a 3-page response where it went in and like searched his LinkedIn profile and
Wow.
was like, this person is LinkedIn profile matches this website and it says they have this position, and like went through and gave me basically an executive write-up of the company and who the main contact is, uh, without me having to do anything other than ask like, tell me this. So just the kind of the level it goes to, I think is impressive.
Right. Okay, fine. You guys have convinced me. You guys convinced me to go to Prosper. Now you're convincing me with Grok. So there you go.
Well,
By the way, total like shout out next week. If you are at Prosper, you can meet both me and Ben. We're going to be there. So
it's
any
true.
of our listeners, do say hello. Right. It's kind of coming to the end of the hour. So, first of all, I want to say this was super interesting conversation. Thank you so much for that. If people want to get in touch with you, how can they do so?
Good question. How do I want people to contact me?
I don't.
Right. Don't contact me. No. I think the easiest right now is probably Facebook. It's just Benjamin Weber, and then because I like to make things easy for people, I'm pretty sure that the picture of me is a house. Uh,
Nice.
and I think I'm the only Benjamin Weber that's in Charlotte, North Carolina on Facebook. So pretty
Do you
easy
know
to
what?
find.
I tried to add you on LinkedIn, realized that is not existing.
I
Get on
have a LinkedIn
LinkedIn.
account.
Yeah?
I think I have 2 friends on there. I had to create it to like somebody's post one time.
There
Uh,
you go. You can like this post when it comes out.
we'll see. I don't really like talking. So
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Well, thank you so much. And thanks to our viewers and listeners. And tune in, I think, next week again. And until then, adios. And hopefully see you at Prosper.